continue down their narrative line that somehow the minister has misled the House. First, Minister, and please correct me if I'm wrong, whenever a minister, in your case the minister responsible for CETA, makes a decision, it then becomes the CETA decision, correct? So then when you have responded on numerous occasions saying it was a CETA decision not to fund KAIROS, that was an accurate statement, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Franks was here, Ned Franks, the professor of political science at Queen's, was here earlier today. He made a number of statements in his opening comment, which he later apologized for, saying they were incorrect. There were much of the same misconceptions that the opposition has and perhaps members of the general public. There were factual inaccuracies. He stated that. He apologized for that. I mention that because Mr. Lefebvre and other members of the opposition seem to be going down the same line, saying they believe you deliberately misled Parliament. I would point out just because the opposition thinks so or says so doesn't make it so. Once again, did you at any time suggest, infer, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, try and give any impression whatsoever to either Parliament or the general public that it was a decision, the decision to not fund KAIROS was a decision made by the CETA officials, or did you always at every opportunity tell them that it was your decision and your decision alone by your statements in the House and outside the House?
I can clearly testify that I have never alluded to, referred to, insinuated in any way that it was a CETA decision in the frame that you've asked the question. I've always referred to CETA decision once the decision was made and became public. There was no intention to mislead or misdirect, misinform in any way. It was common practice. That is something that I do almost on a daily basis. I know what decisions I make. I make those decisions. Those decisions are mine alone. Once I've made those decisions, I automatically refer to them as CETA decisions because CETA only makes recommendations, gives advice to the ministers. The decisions are mine to make.
Thank you. I have a question for Ms. Biggs. I mentioned Mr. Franks was here earlier, and Mr. Franks was concerned that the document that we're all referring to here, this internal document, as I refer to it as an interoffice memo, the recommendation document, he was concerned that that document was a forgery because of the insertion of the word not and the minister's pen signature. Ms. Biggs, did you or any of your officials feel upon receiving that document back from the minister that your advice had been altered, or in fact that this was an attempt to deceive or forge a document? Did you have any impression or opinion at that time that this was not anything more than the minister just merely conveying her displeasure and disapproval of the recommendation?
The documents, when a decision is made by the minister, I am usually notified about it verbally because I'm in communication with the minister and her chief of staff at all times. And in this case, her decision was delivered to me verbally. So, to be honest, I wasn't focusing on the document.
But you weren't concerned that it was a forged document?
The minister's decision to me was clear. I didn't focus on the document.
Thank you. By my clock, Chair, we've got about a minute left. Minister Oda, you had said earlier that there was a couple of questions, one in particular from Mr. Kay, that were left unanswered. You wanted to answer that. If you have an opportunity now, I'd certainly give that to you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Lukiski. I think I provided the information. The question was, when did I speak and find out that Stephanie Mackel, my chief of staff, had actually was the person in my office to insert the word not and to instruct the officials to use the auto pen. I've now answered saying that was the day after I appeared at Foreign Affairs Committee. That was the question. I wanted to make sure I gave a fact. It's a factual answer, and it is the truth.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lukiski. Mr. Paquette.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.